What is a moral boundary you never understood? A while ago, my ex left for a guy she'd been cheating with for an unknown amount of time, a couple months at least. That was hard. I loved that woman with everything I had in a way I'd never felt before. It stayed hard for a long, long time. I wanted to go all the way with her. Guess it wasn't enough. I never knew him, but turns out we run in similar circles, and whether I liked it or not, I heard a bit about him. A few months ago, I met him by happenstance out at a bar. Recognized him immediately, looked him right in the eye, and he didn't seem to recognize the history he was looking back at, or if he did, he didn't let it show. I'm not a particularly hot-headed individual, but let me tell you, I discreetly went through a whole range of emotions that night, stayed outwardly calm and cool, but the most prominent one was under the surface hatred. I wanted to hurt him. I didn't though. I didn't do or say anything on the subject. He made no indication, and I chose to let it be. That stayed with me a bit after, chewing on whether or not I should have, at the very least, made it known that I knew who he was and what they did. Not long after that, just when I was finally beginning to feel past it, all I saw through a mutual that they're about to have a son. The future I saw for us. It brought everything back hard, all the gaslit lies, the betrayal, the friends who ghosted too, and all the best times as well. But it also brought a peculiar sense of calm or maybe detachment. There is still a dull ache that I'm not sure will ever quite fade away, a sense of loss, but it doesn't weigh on me every day anymore. Yikes. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say, and apparently with a side of detachment too. Story 2. So, I took a medical ethics class, and it turns out that if you dig into the topic of assisted termination, it's actually super raw with ethical issues. Let's say someone is horribly injured and in pain, but will heal. There's been multiple instances of this where, say, victims have wanted assisted termination, and then after not being granted it and healing, admit that they were glad they were not assisted. Next, there's the definition of terminal. There have been plenty of terminal patients who ended up not being terminal. It's unlikely, but possible. Let's say you ignore the above and just assume terminal is terminal. A ton of treatments for terminal diseases like cancer have things like depression as a side effect. If the treatment itself may cause depression and thoughts, then how can you rule a patient as mentally fit to make such a decision? Hell, a lot of diseases that can be terminal can cause the same thing. Depression is a disease and needs to be treated as one. Part of that is not allowing someone suffering from it to commit termination instead of getting treatment. It turns out the whole thing is a lot more complex than it seems. We spent weeks on it. The above just scratches the surface. This topic stuck with me because I had the same simplistic view before I learned more. I was also surprised at the complexity of medical ethics surrounding treatment studies. Story 3. I know authoritarian brains are physically, neurologically different from the rest of us. They want to be ruled. They believed in strict hierarchies and everything ranks. Everything higher on the hierarchy is inherently more moral than everything lower on the hierarchy. What's interesting to me is that they will make their own hierarchies. It's no surprise that white males are high on their own hierarchy in an environment where they have the majority of wealth, position, standing, station, and power, but look like Chicken Little run like a little crap when he's the only one in a black neighborhood. Yet the same schmuck will tell you morality is inherent and so is his position. This is why authoritarians worship Trump. He's perceived as higher in the hierarchy and is thus perceived as being morally superior. It's also why Trump looks down upon nearly everyone but a few dictators around the world who have true, absolute power he himself admires and desires. Everyone else, Trump literally finds them disgusting, revolting. He hates the majority and anyone he thinks he can defeat or exploit. His worship of Putin would end if someone reminded him he controls the world's largest, most powerful military of the only remaining superpower. I mean, I observe it, I get it, but I have to remind myself constantly of the rules, because it's just not intuitive to me. I can't think like they do. Authoritarians still shock and horrify me every day by how they see the world and apply their reasoning to it. And this is why we have to be constantly vigilant and intolerant of intolerance, or fascism comes to power, as in the era we are now. Today is evidence to me that we never truly assimilated modern technology into society. The technology just grew too fast, unchecked, misunderstood, and it allowed fascism to breed and fester. It used to be that the lunatic man who said the world was flat was laughed at, as he should be. Instead, he was able to find his echo chamber where his noise was amplified into legitimacy. And Gen Z is the first generation in history that is constantly polling and testing more conservative than older generations. Story 4. That you're not supposed to comment on other people's spending habits. One time in grad school, I was smoking a hookah with a friend, and a coal fell on his area rug. It burned a small hole, and I mean really small, and in a place normally covered by the coffee table. He got angry and immediately opened his phone to order a new rug, a several $100 rug. We were really close at the time and talked about all kinds of very intimate things, but when I went, sheesh, that's a pretty expensive reaction, he absolutely lost it on me. This normally super liberal, feminist dude suddenly starts giving me a strict dad tone and says to me, "You are not to comment on my spending habits." I thought he was joking at first. It was such a bizarre tone shift. Obviously, I found out later that his family was pretty wealthy and he liked to downplay that to get along with everyone else, roughing it through grad school poverty. My other friends and I, all ranges of income, some poorer than me, some richer, all talk openly about money and we trust each other. But some people have an absolutely iron do not talk about money boundary to the point of making things even more awkward. Story 5. Casually being bare. I've never understood why it's not okay to be bare in front of other people without consent, or for women to not be able to show, or even why it's not okay for garments to show through a shirt. Monogamy. A lot of people get really upset by the idea of someone, like not even themselves, just other people, having multiple romantic partners and spouses. I don't understand how anyone could be against people having more love in their life, as if someone else having multiple lovers somehow invalidates your own. Corporal punishment. People hit kids to teach them not to do things, while at the same time teaching kids that it's not okay to hit people? What? Smoking around other people, especially around children. Why isn't that mistreatment? There are more. I just can't think of them right now, or I'm not sure if they actually count as a moral boundary as opposed to simply a societal taboo. Story 6. I have a very specific example. I keep thinking about body unattractiveness. People who have it often go to extremes to try and adjust their bodies to align with what they want to see by undergoing various operations. It is greatly frowned upon, and in psychology, it seems that the method of therapy is to avoid it and then try to build a relationship with one's body. I myself have body unattractiveness, and I spend days planning and thinking of how exactly I need to change my body so I could recognize myself in the mirror and not see that stranger I do see. It is very distressing and difficult for me to accept myself as I am. The moral ambiguity for me comes into place when one suffers from gender dissatisfaction. In a way, I am jealous. Gender affirming care is allowing you to change your body to what you align with most. I keep thinking about how it is the same problem occurring in both patients, yet one treatment is frowned upon, while the other is celebrated. It seems to be even taboo to suggest the same psychological method to gender dysphoric people, aka accepting oneself. I feel like comparing both situations may bring a new horizon of possibilities of treatment to both parties, but due to one being morally wrong and the other being morally right, it feels like it stagnates in the scientific discovery process. This makes me question that moral outline of the control of our bodies, changes to them. What if we were in a sci-fi society? Changing body parts would be a manner of life. At that point, there is no more discussion. But why? Story 7. Criticizing someone for something that you let someone else slide for? I was at a wedding recently with my siblings and their partners, and my mom was there, who I hadn't seen in years, and she didn't even attempt to talk to me at all. My group started criticizing my mom for not coming to talk to me, and I had to point out that I didn't try to talk to her either, so I'm not any better. Also, one of my brothers and sisters don't ever talk to another sister of mine, and their reasoning for not speaking to her is that she never calls to check in on their kids. Which would be understandable, sort of, because I myself have not once in the 5 years these kids have existed have ever bothered to call and ask about them, but for some reason I get a pass. Our whole family has always given me a pass and I don't understand it. I never reach out to anybody. I don't check in. I have even voiced on multiple occasions criticisms that I have of certain family members and the actions they take in life, and that as much as I love family, I don't want anyone showing up at my door for any reason other than they're being hunted by a serial criminal or something. But for some reason, no one has alienated me in any way. I get invited to all the parties. The children of the family love me despite the fact that I never answer the texts they send me. The elderly members all speak very highly of me to people they meet. Of course, I like to be treated kindly, but there are other members of my family that are alienated by other individuals in the family for doing things that I also do. And it's always confused me why everyone lets me slide. I have voiced this to everyone in my family too, and everyone gives excuses as to why it's just different, but it's not. Well, it could be the classic case of do as I say, not as I do. Story 8. Someone beat me to the legal, moral, illegal, immoral thing, so I'll go for something else a bit more controversial, just because I'm certain any of the other things will be here in the thread. The idea that you have to completely trust, 100% trust your girlfriend or wife in today's society, or you'll be bombarded with who hurt you and other deflective and gaslighting statements. What about nobody hurting that person? They just know it's human behavior to do things that aren't always morally right, and also that some are more prone to it than others. Maybe they're on edge and need reassurance. That's the thing that's always talked about when the roles are reversed. But my favorite explanation is this: we all have family members. Just like you, I have known my family members my entire life for the most part. If we're both 26 years old and we met a year ago, then I have known you for only 1 year of my life and 1 year of your life. I truly do not know you. I have family members that I truly know that have crossed me. You do too. A lot of people do. It's common. I'm willing to trust you. I want to trust you. And I'm also learning who you are at that very point in time. A part of those things is me asking questions and getting a sincere answer. Because it's what you'd like from me when you ask me any questions. Trust is earned, and that takes time. You have my benefit of the doubt and some trust. You don't have all of it, and it's crazy to me that in today's society, the media has cornered a lot of dudes into the position that we need to have blind faith in our SO. I don't even trust God that much, and I'm a believer. I wouldn't be such a sinner. I'm not going to trust another human being that much unless they've got nothing to gain from how loyal and loving they've been to me, like my grandmothers. That's just outright sacrificial love and worthy of endless trust. I'm actually going into another moral boundary if you haven't caught on yet, which is the idea that we can't make our SO choose between us or others. If a woman gets online and says she told her man that he has to choose between his lazy friends who smoke all day or maintaining the relationship with her for whatever reason, y'all, the woman reading this, would be all over on her side and praising her decision. Guess what? I would too. Because birds of a feather flock together, and on the insignificantly small chance that he isn't anything like them at all, your relationship still runs future risks of their poor behavior patterns interfering with it. I'm all for her giving him that ultimatum. She's thinking ahead. Now, if a man were to go online and give that same ultimatum to his lady about her going on a girls' trip with her homegirls, when we all know what happens on girls' trips, and he's aware because women talk about their friends to their boyfriends, ladies, and because he has eyes, ears, and common sense plus access to social media and can see their accounts, that her friends are going to be out there getting hammered and looking for something while calling it having fun and living life. He'd get slammed on the internet and called controlling, when in reality the saying still applies: birds of a feather flock together. He's thinking ahead, just like the woman was in the first example. When I'm in a relationship, I don't care if my girl goes through my phone. I let my ex do it. She immediately went for the photos. She cried. I even unlocked the hidden folder for her. I warned her if she didn't like what she saw while digging all the way back through my photos section, she'd be distraught going through the hidden photos, but she was free to do so and take as much time as she wants. Why? Because I'm not hiding anything from her. She deserves to know what she's getting into and who she's dating. She offered to go through her photos in return a few days later when she calmed down, but I refused. Whatever she had in there that could have rubbed me the wrong way, she likely deleted by then. So I didn't even let it bother me, and her persistence that I just take her phone and check only confirmed that idea for me. I didn't hold it against her, though. I didn't bring up the idea of going through phones. She did. It was out of sight, out of mind for me. But if that's what it took to earn her trust, then I was willing to do it because it has to be earned and grows over time. I'm fine with that. Story 9. Looks I get whenever I tell people that I haven't spoken to my parents in 7 or so years and their insistence that I should try to mend things and have them back in my life. I get that you had a pleasant childhood and you have a healthy relationship with your parents, but I didn't. I don't, and I'm much happier not having them in my life. No, I do not owe them for taking care of me when I was a child, for starters, because they didn't. My older sister did. No, I don't care if they change, and also, you don't know what happened. You don't have some moral high ground because you think that our life situations are even somewhat similar in this aspect. Story 10. Not acting desperate for a job when applying or interviewing for new jobs. Like, I'm applying for this job because I need a job, not for craps and giggles. Like, I'm not going to tell you my kids will starve if I don't get a job, but saying something like, I have 3 mouths to feed and I qualified for this job would be seen as acting desperate. I don't have kids personally. This was just the first example I thought of. They want you to say some BS answer that is fluffy and nice. Story 11. I've been called some very interesting things because I said hunting was good for the deer in my area. There aren't a lot of natural predators around here. There are some, but not enough to keep the population in check most years, which means there wouldn't be enough food for all the deer, so they face starvation. They also start coming closer to human populated areas in search of food, which is dangerous for not only the deer, but humans and any pets too. So it's better for hunters who are told each year how many deer they can terminate based on population to thin the population. It also means those hunters and their family have food for winter. Or if they don't want or need the meat, they can donate it to a butcher shop in town. They process and distribute the meat to various groups and shelters. Yeah, so he's basically a real life video game character balancing the ecosystem one deer at a time. Story 12. Allowing a physically healthy but depressed or otherwise mentally unwell person to commit termination. The argument is usually depression is treatable, which is frequently untrue. Most people who survive regret the attempt, which is frequently a lie. So they don't get committed, but wouldn't matter anyway if they succeed because they don't have regrets. It's selfish, which can also be said about the people who want them to stay alive. Or they're not mentally fit enough to make that decision, which, seriously? Non-straight people were once considered not mentally fit and still are in some places. That mentality itself needs to take off. By all means, try to stop your loved ones from offing themselves, but don't get a third party with zero skin in the game involved. I say this as someone who has lost loved ones to termination and lives in constant fear of losing yet another. Far too many people are shamed into popping out more babies or staying alive when they'd rather not. Obviously, this stance will get a lot of hate, but it needs to be said. Story 13. Respecting people, even if they repeatedly choose to disrespect you, specifically relating to family members and even coworkers and such. Like, why would I ever sit here and take absolute disrespect from someone who clearly just means to hurt me? Why would I care if they're even related? Of course, it hurts to cut off the people that are supposed to be there for you, but if you try to communicate with them why you are the way you are or why you do the things you do and they just ridicule you for it, do what needs to be done. Mother, father, anyone. It is never worth the pain it brings. It brings more pain sitting there taking mistreatment from someone who was supposed to be there for you than it does to just simply leave, assuming you have that option. Story 14. A lot of the social justice moral stances are off-putting to me. It takes the concept of prejudice and makes it conditional, creating classes of people that are essentially above moral reproach. I know people will hate this, but from my perspective, it's all true. Just because you're a person of color doesn't mean you can't be prejudiced. Just because someone is a woman doesn't mean they never lie about being mistreated. And just because someone is not straight doesn't mean they get to flaunt openly their gender on the street for children to see. We're all human beings and should act respectful of one another regardless of what our skin color, gender, or preferences are. Nobody should be discriminated against and nobody should get special treatment. We all deserve equal opportunities, not equal outcomes. Story 15. Religion. I'm atheist and I've had some people push religion on me, especially Christians and Catholics. Oh, you're feeling sad? Embrace Jesus. No, I just found out my cat had leukemia. Leave me be. Are you struggling with school? You should pray. No, I should study. And I get it, your beliefs have a positive influence in your life. Doesn't mean I have to believe in them as well. I'll respect them. Hell, if I'm in someone else's household and they're saying grace or praying, I'll do it with them. And believe that all religions have some inherent truth to them, but that doesn't mean I believe in them. So stop pushing religion onto those who don't believe in it. Also, I will never understand the us versus them mentality, people always judging others on political alignment or religion or skin color or race or simply thinking differently. I can't understand. It's so small, people should only be judged on their individual actions. And if they don't harm anyone and don't force their beliefs on others, it shouldn't matter what they believe or do. Hate, victim blaming, hypocrisy based on allegiance and ideology only serves to separate and damn us all and never solves the problems of the world that they bicker over. And if you're enjoying the video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 16. Not a moral boundary, but I never understood two things that don't seem like a big deal that seem to really anger people off. It's never been a big deal if someone does it to me. First, pointing. People seem to get very bent out of shape if you're pointing at them when speaking, like it's some kind of disrespect. Maybe it's cultural, but this is something that has never bothered me, holds no significance to me if someone else does it and doesn't matter to me. The second is telling people to relax or chill out. I've had a friend go ballistic because I said relax or chill out, not in a condescending or rude way, but to indicate something is not that big of a deal and to give some perspective. I always say it out of love and because I'm concerned, but I have learned some people get very, very upset and not to say it anymore. Story 17. One that I genuinely don't understand and would appreciate someone to explain to me. A sudden visit of inspection or hidden speed cam stuff. The point is to maintain order, yet people hate it if there's a hidden speed cam, properly hidden, not like one still installed on a pole with just no light, as if it's cheating to hide. Same thing with restaurants who have unannounced inspections of their safety, hygiene, and general cleanliness. Why do they hate that when it's simply good to always maintain a certain level of cleanliness without fakery? Story 18. I think this is an important one that has gained visibility as the internet and in particular influencers make it more visible, that you have to perform charitative acts out of the kindness of your heart alone and that it's not okay to help others seeking to gain something out of it. People act like it's immoral to dedicate time to feed the homeless if you record it, because the visibility may help you gain something in return. I've seen comments that act like that makes them bad people, and often it's not because they judge the person doing said work because they seek praise. It's the fact that they can earn money with said visibility when that is not a critique of a job like being a nurse gets. Should it really matter the reason someone deciding to do something that helps others? Story 19. I would say the whole two rules thing that fell out of favor because the wrong people were using it the wrong way. The two rules being that the two first rules for asking someone out are 1. Be attractive, and 2. Don't be unattractive. It actually touches on two different moral boundaries. The people who were using it wrong use it as a reason to hate the other person for being superficial, rather than just being a helpful thing to keep in mind about how you present yourself to someone else. Everyone has the right to and the interest in dating people they're attracted to, even the bad actors themselves. The other one is that because someone uses that idea in that way, that means you should reject a perfectly valid and likely very useful thing to keep in mind. Just because bad actors used it doesn't mean you need to accept their framing and just reject it out of hand. Story 20. 2 weeks' notice on resignations. I never understood this principle and why people follow it so seriously. Companies often lay you off without warning and sometimes fire you without warning. Why would you give these companies the time to find a replacement for you? You're possibly leaving and not looking to come back because of pay or crappy managers or whatever it is. So why give them a buffer for your departure? Unless it's some small mom and pop shop or something and you genuinely care about their well-being. I simply never understood it. I've never returned to a place of employment once I exited personally. Story 21. Lately, for me, it's the venom and fire directed at relationships and attraction where there is an age difference. Before you get triggered, I'm not talking about or condoning it or anything. What I'm talking about is the complete meltdowns I see around this topic as if it is a universal truth that usually a man, but also women, are condemned and vilified for a relationship with a younger adult person. Hell, it was the way of the world for most of recorded time, and it is still the norm in vast regions of the world. Full disclosure, I am a 60-ish boomer and I do not have any relations with much younger women. But let me say, though, that as someone who for most of my young adulthood presented as someone much younger, I was literally bombarded by attention and offers from women much older than me. And I turned out okay, so what's the issue? Story 22. Tearing babies away from their mothers, telling a woman what she is allowed to do with her body, telling people who they can be and who they can love, mass production of animal products that results in mistreatment and suffering, people who keep pets but treat them like crap but won't let you try to save them because they just want to hold on to them, like the people who just have a dog outside and ignore it but won't let you give it love and attention. And after this election, people who voted against human rights just saying, get over it, because they don't like that some people are depressed about it. And religious people who push their beliefs on you and shame you all in the name of God while none of their actions actually reflect anything worthy of a God. Story 23. That it is wrong to drive to someone's house to say you're sorry, make amends, and then try to reconcile. People say it is wrong because it's invasive and indicates a lack of respect for personal boundaries. But if your intent is to right a wrong, how is that a bad thing? I understand how people can perceive it as making the other person uncomfortable, but if your intent is good, then what is the issue? Forgiveness, redemption, atonement, making amends, and becoming a better person are all good things. And if your only method is to seek them out in person, then how is that bad? Story 24. People that get mad or upset over someone making fun of them. Well, I mean, I understand people getting mad if you make fun of them for having like Down syndrome or needing glasses. I understand that, but someone calling me ugly or calling me names just doesn't make me mad. And I understand that it hurts people, obviously. I'm not some schmuck who goes around making fun of people, then calling them dramatic. But I just never understood how they let it bother them so much. Like, I get made fun of a lot of people have even like hit me, not in like an aggressive way. I want us to throw hands kind of way, but like just walk past me and whack me upside the head. That kind of stuff just doesn't bother me. Can someone explain to me what you guys are thinking about in that moment or what goes through your head when this happens? Story 25. I always hated that zero tolerance policy, as they say. I stood up to an oppressor my senior year of high school. She'd been picking on a girl on the bus all year, pretty much. I was tired of it and said something. She sat down and I leaned back in my seat. Next thing I know, she's swinging at me, so I fight back because I'm not about to just sit there and take it. I got suspended and she got expelled. She had a history of pestering and fights. When I came back from my suspension, 2 days, my teachers all pulled me aside to tell me they were proud. One teacher let me make up all my work from the day and told the office they had a movie day as he was supposed to put zeros for me. He said he agreed with what I did, so why punish me further? Get pestered, nothing gets done. Stand up to an oppressor, though, and suddenly you're the problem. Story 26. In capitalist countries, the goal of most people is to work only as long as you have to and then retire. In other words, the goal is to not need to work. Why? Because people generally don't want a job, they want a purpose, and jobs tend to get in the way. So why is it then that when this is our desire, we crap on people who don't want to work, or people who live on less so that they can work part-time? Why is it okay for the rich to not work because they deserve it, but the rest of us don't? Why is it okay that the rich get subsidized by the government and make all their money on the backs of others, but not okay for a poor person with a job or disability to get government assistance? I don't think that's okay, and I think people push nobody wants to work anymore as this moral virtue signal to maintain this grossly imbalanced hierarchy. But boy, do a lot of Americans get uppity if you suggest the rich are rich because they stole value from others. Story 27. This is personal. Managers that favor other coworkers and let them get away with stuff. My coworker went out of her way to tell on me to managers that I didn't do my bathroom duties. It's sort of randomized daily. I had already owned up to my mistake. Hard to read it, even the closing manager struggled, and offered to do it on my next shift. When I clocked on for my next shift, my matrix had in huge letters and aggressively highlighted bathroom 6 p.m. I was then pulled into a meeting where I was logged for failure to do my assigned duty, which can place me at risk of losing out on raises or even being fired. The coworker who reported me forgot hers. Instead of getting the same passive-aggressive treatment, they did nothing and made me clean up her mess. I've never argued with managers before, but we had a very heated exchange on how I felt. Said coworker is now having loud conversations on the phone and wearing these comically large headphones while on the floor. Story 28. How there are rules and time periods for if you need to cancel or reschedule a doctor's appointment, or if you are late more than 10 to 15 minutes, they won't see you, and some practices will even fine you for these rule violations. But they can call and cancel reschedule you on a whim, sometimes right as you're halfway there. Some will have you waiting an hour to be seen, then rush you through the appointment. So it's okay for you to have rules and repercussions for when you feel your time was wasted or not valued, but we get nothing and have to accept it. If we have to cancel within a certain time frame, they should also respect that same time frame. If we have to pay fines for violating the rules, they can knock some money off this bill for making people sit in a waiting area way past their appointment time. It irks me. Story 29. When a student has a legit and valid reason to call out an educator for their poor actions. A pupil who is in high school or below is viewed as dangerous and is crewed out. They're seen as disrespectful for questioning authority. In most cases, professors at colleges and universities would call a truce and offer an apology for their errors. Had this occurred when I first started attending community college and confronted a harsh English teacher, I got up to leave her class. Since I was 18, I was prepared for trouble. She did phone me, anticipating problems. She wanted to express her regret for what had transpired and other frequent academic support. Comparably, when a student receives a grade of a high school or below and criticizes the faculty for treating pupils poorly, that student is disciplined for being rude even when they are correct. When students experience the same situation while in college, the institution is open to working with them to reach a resolution. Keep in mind, I'm talking about non-violence resistance. Come to think about it, at least here in the United States, when a white straight man protests a wrong, the community would likely ask what is a problem and offer to help. When a non-white, non-binary person does the same thing, then the community has a problem with that person. Again, non-violence resistance. Story 30. I think a lot of public intoxication laws are BS, excluding driving, of course. They are moral-based laws that do nothing but increase punishments for relatively minor things and give police an easy excuse to pester people who aren't doing anything wrong. Anybody who's ever lived in a college town knows what's up. I remember going to a friend's apartment and there was no smoking inside and no smoking section other than the street. So everyone went outside with their drinks. Cops rolled up almost immediately and said it's illegal to have open alcohol in public. So we said, sorry, we'll go back inside. Nope. Both cops jump out the cruiser and tell us if anyone touched the door would be under arrest and made us all dump our drinks down the sewer drain. If a town wants to put in bylaws for certain areas, totally fine, but making up crime that isn't there makes no sense. Story 31. I had two brothers in class, 6th grader and an 8th grader. Little brother let it slip that mom was in the hospital and they ran out of food at home. I called the older brother into my office, and at first he denied it, saying stepdad was at home with him. It was the first time either one had mentioned a stepdad. Once I told him I wasn't going to report it, but if he needed food, I would help him get it, he broke down. Mom had an unexpected illness, but was scheduled for release in 4 days. I took him to the grocery store, spent $50-ish. I had a gift card, fortunately, on sandwich supplies, frozen dinners, and some other things the older brother said he knew how to cook. I'm a mandatory reporter. It was absolutely illegal not to report a 14 and 11-year-old being left at home alone. But they just need to hold it together for 4 more days, and I truly believe the foster care system would have been worse, and that this woman didn't deserve to lose her kids for getting sick. Story 32. Giving away food at the end of your shift at a bakery, restaurant, etc. that is 100% edible, but will be thrown away otherwise. I used to work at Panera years ago, and every day we'd have 2 huge boxes filled with bagels, cookies, pastries, loaves of bread, and the like, all pretty much fresh as if it had just been made. They usually donate the boxes to nearby shelters after letting employees have as much of it as they want to eat or take home, but apparently they are the exception, not the rule. Most food establishments don't or can't give away leftover food, despite the fact that it is completely safe to eat and a lot of hungry people eat it. Story 33. Feeding the homeless. Me and my GF were thrown in jail for about a week and fined $1,500 each for giving food to a family in need. I just can't simply let a family that can't afford food to starve. Me and my GF have always given full paid jobs with benefits to the homeless to help us on our farm, and we're currently building an animal sanctuary and have hired a lot more. Helps get them out of poverty and makes us feel good for helping out the less fortunate. It's why I can't stand those scummy billionaires that don't spend their money to do good. Story 34. Everyone in America is a felon because of how poorly our laws are written. They are intentionally written to cast as wide a net as possible because Congress are terrible at writing laws. Assisting an animal which is endangered is a federal crime. By law, interfering in any way with an endangered species is illegal even if your motives are good. To quote an excerpt from You Have the Right to Remain Innocent by James Duane, in Virginia, it is a crime to, quote, hunt, trap, take, capture, attempt to take, deliver for transportation, transport, cause to be transported by any means whatever, receive for transportation or export or import at any time or in any manner, any wild bird or wild animal or the carcass or any part thereof, except as specifically permitted by law. Once again, we have a law that is aimed at a sensible purpose, controlling the illegal and unrestricted termination and possession of certain wild animals like deer or bears, without the proper authorization and licenses, but the idiots who wrote it could not go to the trouble of writing it narrowly enough so that it would be limited to its intended purpose. The way this absurd law is written, you are guilty of a crime as long as you merely possess any part of anything that was once a wild bird or animal. That would include a sand dollar or a seashell that you picked up on the beach. And just in case you think the government would never prosecute under such a flimsy, ridiculous law, just a few years ago, for example, the United States Department of Justice actually used the federal chemical weapons ban to prosecute a woman for putting a mild chemical irritant on the mailbox of her husband's girlfriend, even though nobody was even seriously, much less permanently injured. The victim of this attack suffered nothing more than a minor thumb burn that was readily treated by rinsing with water. That was the same case in which the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously concluded that, if they adhered to the insane interpretation of this terrible statute that was being defended by the Department of Justice, You could be prosecuted for using a few drops of vinegar to poison your child's goldfish. The Supreme Court correctly noted that the government's proposed interpretation of this law would sweep in everything from the detergent under the kitchen sink to the stain remover in the laundry room. Story 35. In California, giving money to panhandlers. I understand the logic behind it, I do. You don't want homeless people lingering, so you try to make it illegal for them to benefit by standing around. Plus, it's non-taxable income. But dude, what else are they supposed to do? A lot of the homeless in California are mentally disabled, veterans, and people with painful habits and a total lack of coping mechanisms. There aren't always programs to get people back on their feet. And even if they are, not everyone wants to conform to societal norms. Homelessness isn't going anywhere, making it illegal to sleep in public, be in parks after sunset, panhandle, or use public restrooms. If you're not a customer, doesn't make the homeless go away. They have nowhere to go. You've just made it easier to make them serve time for something completely out of their control. We need a long-term action plan, and locally in my county, we don't have a needle exchange. All of our rehab facilities require either insurance or $4,500 for care, and we'll put you on a wait list for months to be seen, and any mentally disabled adults are treated the same as the up ones. People fear the homeless here. They're just people. Let me help a dude buy a cookie from the subway so we can use the restroom. If they choose to spend the money on substances, then so be it. Maybe they just need to not go through withdrawals. I don't care. I should be free to hand them money if I so choose. It may not be illegal to give them money, but it is highly discouraged with signs posted in areas with high homeless populations. It is illegal to panhandle here. Story 36. Termination, specifically a doctor-assisted termination, a person's own decision to end it all, due to a terminal or debilitating illness. Their ability to be able to leave this world with dignity in a pain-free way of their choosing, no different than what we do for our pets. I've never understood why it's illegal in the US. It's disgusting that we, as a country, decided it was more ethical to end the suffering of a pet than letting a self-aware human being choose to live without horrific pain. A mind that's rapidly deteriorating, being a burden on their families or not having ones to take care of them, and being a ward of the state, etc., etc. But no, these draconian laws we have in place say that human beings here must get the full ride experience, and that includes passing away in a horrifically painful and often embarrassing and burdening way. Sorry, not sorry, we won't put humans over profit and cure these diseases. Now go and pass away in whatever way you see fit, unless it's dignified. That hurts our profits way too much. Jack Kevorkian was a hero. Story 37. When I was in grad school, I knew the area really well as I went straight from undergrad to the grad program, so I had been on campus for 4 years already. A lot of the people fresh to campus would ask me questions about the school and surrounding areas. One of my classmates was asking me where to find housing for him and his family. He was probably mid-40s, married, and had 2 young children. He told me how he went to a local apartment complex and said that it looked really nice and was close to campus and on a bus route. The manager there said he wouldn't rent to him because he has kids. Completely illegal. You can't discriminate against someone when it comes to housing because they have a family. Here's the thing. I know that complex. He was there in the summer when it's quiet, and all you see are large yards, duplex-style housing, decks, and lots of parking. Once the semester starts, it's a different story. The place has been a notorious party spot for literally decades. My dad talked about the party scene there when he went to school there in the 70s. The party starts Thursday afternoon and goes almost continuously until Sunday afternoon, every single week, blaringly loud music, hundreds of people outside, bonfires, and tons of drinking. It would have been a nightmare of a year for him. That property manager broke the law and totally did that guy a huge favor. And if you liked any of these stories, do us a favor. Here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.